Kia ora everybody, I'm Rochelle Stewart-Allen from Huia Community Aotearoa. Welcome to today's session on where to find support as a non-profit chief executive. Great to have you on board. We've got everybody signing in now, so we'll just give them a minute or so. While you're waiting, why don't you put in the chat where you're from and where you're based today. I'm based here in Te Whanganui Tara. It's kind of warm, but I've sort of got the window open, but still could do with a little bit more heat, I think. So it'd be great to hear whereabouts you're based while we just wait for everyone to sign in. All right, so kia ora everybody. So we'll get started now. I'll hand you over to John Tamahiri-Kemes from the Mentoring Foundation, who's partnering with us today alongside with the Leeds Centre for Non-Profit Governance and Leadership. So John's going to start us with a karakia. Over to you, John.
Kia ora. Kia taunu mana ki tangata me nārau, ki runga ki tēnā o tātou. Kia mahia te hua mā kihi. Kia toi te kupu, toi te mana, toi te aroha, toi te reo Māori, kia tūturu, kia whakamaua, kia tīna, huie, tā iki e. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thanks, John. So now I'm going to hand you over to Sandy Thompson from Lead, and she's going to start today. So how we'll run is Sandy will do some talk about coaching and leadership and some of the challenges and some of the options for you. Then we'll hand over to John and he'll talk about mentoring and how that can operate. And then we have a couple of fantastic leaders from the community. We've got Huia O'Sullivan and Michelle Kitney, and so they're going to talk about their own lived experience of doing training, mentoring, peer-to-peer groups and how that's worked for them. So over to you, Sandy.
Kia ora, thanks Rochelle. Hi everyone, I'm just going to share my screen with you. I've got some slides. Kia ora everyone, I'm Sandy and I'm from the Leeds Centre for Not-for-Profit Governance and Leadership, and we're a group of people who are really passionate about empowering community leaders to be the best they can be and supporting community organisations to be the best they can be. We are all passionate about social justice and believe that strong communities and strong leaders leads to an equitable society for all of us. My job today is I'm going to talk a little bit about the back end, about leadership development, the context that we are all leading under, and why it's really important for us as chief executives to get support because of that context that we're leading in. So I'm just going to share you a few slides. We are leading in what we call a FUCA world. Some people call this a VUCA world, but I quite like FUCA. And the current context that we're in, particularly in the last 2 years, means that the nature of change that we're dealing with as leaders is really fragile. That where there's a lack of predictability, things are quite uncertain for us. Different parts of the country, there's different levels of uncertainty around how we can operate. There's just no question whatsoever that the world is far more complex now than it ever has been in our experience as human beings. And by complexity, we mean that there's no direct link between cause and effect. Things aren't operating linearly. The interconnections and the interdependence of everything we do as leaders is really in the forefront. And that finds us in confounding situations where collectively we're trying to solve really what we call wicked issues and wicked problems. So the traditional old-fashioned way of leading, the heroic leadership with the person out the front, leading the team or the organization or community behind them, doesn't fit for us anymore. And also we're in a world where things are quite ambiguous. The reality is a little bit hazy sometimes. And this is related to the previous three. But what it also means is the potential for miscommunication and people making assumptions about what's going on is really strong. So leadership talents like being able to communicate well and connect with people become really, really important for us. So I like the metaphor of a whitewater raft, that the context that we're leading in sometimes feels like we're on a whitewater raft journey. So for us to lead in this environment requires some special competencies and skills and approaches. And first, it requires us as leaders to be quite flexible, because we're changing constantly and we're trying to work out patterns and what to do and how to solve problems. We can't be fixed in our approach. Most important for today's conversation is that for us to work in a FUCA world, we need to participate in ongoing learning. And that's because we are constantly learning, what does this change mean for us? What's going to happen in the short term, medium, long term for me as a leader in our organization from here? And because the world is changing so fast, and because we are part of a global world, learning is the way that we can do that. And also learning needs to be collaborative for us to be effective, yeah? How we see the world is not necessarily how the person in the organization next door sees the world. And when we come together to collaboratively do some sense making of our environment and our context, that's when we can really understand what's happening. You have to be able to cope with ambiguity, yeah? So leaders have to be able to say, I don't know the answer. Together, let's see if we can find a way forward. Transformational approaches rather than transactional approaches are how we need to lead our people in this world, in this FUCA world. So building others to be the best they can be and for them to lead is what we need to do as leaders. The first job of a leader is to create new leaders. We have to embrace change. We cannot keep doing the same thing that we've been doing for how many centuries and how many decades and expect things to be different. Yeah, if how we've been dealing with poverty and misogyny and racism and all those things, why are we still fighting those causes? Yeah, we have to learn new ways to do it, because obviously what we've been doing hasn't worked. And also collective leadership. Not one person can do this. Yeah, not one person can lead. When we're together, that's when we are stronger. So team, I'm going to get you guys to do a little bit of the work, and I'm going to invite the team to put you all into breakout rooms. And when you're in your breakout rooms, I'd like you to introduce yourself to each other. You know, this is all about making connections as leaders so that we're not leading on our own. And I want you to have a conversation about where you learnt your leadership. So for about 5 minutes, where did you learn your leadership, folk? I have to say that I got to hear Rochelle's leadership story, and hers was similar to mine about volunteering, yeah? And that as community leaders, sometimes we just work our way into those leadership roles. And that one day at a certain point in our journey, we discovered that actually we're this thing called a leader, and we get, for whatever various reasons, the authority or the mandate to lead. So team, I'm just going to share my some more slides with you around leadership development, about how we become leaders. And a piece of international research was done based in the States about how people learn to lead. So the caveat here is this was done on the corporate sector, looking at corporate executives and how they learned to lead. And the number one way that people learn to lead, which I think reflects our sector and my experience listening to leader stories, is the number one as well. And that's about on-the-job experiences. So we're given tasks, we're given projects, we're given promotions, we have ethical dilemmas we have to work out. And through that process of doing the mahi is where we learn our leadership. And very often when I work with leaders, they talk about how they started as a volunteer in the organization. Next minute, they're now the CEO, you know, a few years later. So they're learning on the job, which kind of makes us feel like we're always making it up as we go along. And in my coaching and mentoring work, I hear that a lot from leaders. They feel like they're an imposter. I'm not really a leader, and I feel like I'm making this up as I go along. And this is where the value of coaching and mentoring comes in, which John will talk about after me. The second common place that people learnt their leadership was through developmental relationships. So a lot of people had someone in their life that was a catalyst or a role model that taught them how to lead or supported them to become leaders. And a lot of people learnt their leadership from their own leaders. And not only good leaders and having those role models, but from bad leaders as well. So a lot of people learned how not to lead and aspired how not to be in terms of the type of leader they wanted to be. Quite often adverse situations teach us very valuable leadership, career setbacks, crisis. And I have to say also working with difficult people can actually challenge our leadership, and through undergoing crisis and that type of management around people, that is how we learn and tighten up our leadership acumen. So relevant today a little bit is about formal training, that a lot of leaders actually do formal training, seek out workshops, seek out qualifications, seek out mentors to help them on their journey. Usually when people, that whole concept of like, I'm missing something, I'm not sure if I know what I'm doing, they go out and seek some extra skill-based training. Our personal experiences are probably key to who we are as leaders and where we learn our leadership. So that's how we were brought up, yeah? So our life's journey is what teaches us around leadership. Quite often we want to make a difference in the world, or we're seeking change. I think this is really relevant for us in our sector, that when we want to change something, we step into that leadership role. So our community leaders are not satisfied with the status quo and they step up. And last of all, sometimes we're exposed to colliding perceptions. Yeah, sometimes we become exposed to other worldviews or other cultures that really challenge how we see the world. And as we mature and our leadership grows, we start to realize actually the world is different to different people, and I need to be able to accommodate that as a leader. So this is what the research says, and I'm making a pretty good guess that most of you were able to say that at least one or two of those is how you learned your leadership. So we do know that in a FUCA world that there's a certain type of leadership development that's more effective for our leaders. And traditionally we had what was called horizontal development. So leaders were taught skills and capabilities to be able to make them lead well. Yeah, so they just kept adding to people's buckets. Yeah, so it's about what you know makes you an effective leader. But in our complex world, it's a bit different to that. So we have now in leadership development programs what we call vertical development. And that is that we think about how somebody sees the world and how they think about the world, and how they're able to think in complex, systematic ways and interdependent ways, sensing patterns, sensing collaborations. And it's about how you think as a leader. And we were in a breakout room with Kat, and she was talking about authentic leadership and being yourself. So we know now that vertical development is really important to help leaders to work out who they are as individuals and who they are as leaders, because we don't leave ourselves at the door. And in the culture that we are from and the culture that we work in, we don't leave that at the door when we walk into our workplaces and our not-for-profits. So that has to be integrated into how we lead. So in Aotearoa, we have a number of places that we can go to get that leadership support. And, you know, Google is the wonderful thing, right? But I have to say that in my experience, the largest providers of leadership training are those regional capacity building organizations. And that might just be because quite often they bring us in to help them to do their mahi, but I see the type of informal workshops they do is absolutely incredible. They run week-long courses, seminars, all sorts of things. And examples of them are ANCAD in Auckland, Community Waikato, Social Link in Tauranga, the Wheelhouse in New Plymouth. They are all organizations that were set up to build the capacity of leaders and communities. So they're an excellent port of call for what training is available. Then we have our sector-specific capacity builders. So these are organizations whose mission is to build up a specific sector, maybe mental health, refugee, social work sector, and they often deliver bespoke training for those sectors. So if you belong to your national network or your regional network, you'll find out about those trainings. There are some tertiary institutes that do leadership development. Those of you know me, we used to work at Unitec, who had a graduate diploma in not-for-profit management, which unfortunately no longer is offered. But Otago, Auckland, and I think Christchurch run leadership development qualifications that incorporate community leadership and social change in the work they do. And of course, master's programs now, pretty much a master's student designs their own program at this point. So you can actually get your master's degree in not-for-profit leadership at most training providers. Then in New Zealand, we have a whole bunch of people like LEAD and the Mentoring Foundation and Exalt and Catapult and Leadership New Zealand and Grow. And it's our mission to deliver leadership development training. And most of us do that informally. By that, I mean, we're not attached to NZQA frameworks, but there are some career force courses that have been attached to the framework. Local Auckland councils, local councils like Auckland City Council, sometimes their community brokers and their local community board brokers will organise training. And also the volunteer centres all around the country do quite a bit of leadership development and capacity building as well. So these are just some examples of where we can go if we're seeking support and some professional development. Just wanted to share this slide with you. So this is really biased because this is how LEAD sees what really good quality leadership development programs look like. And for us as an organization, this is what we aspire to deliver. But I think for people seeking some kind of development support, it's a nice checklist for you to use before you engage in a training program or a development program, especially if it's going to cost you money. And that's kind of what I've been talking about before, that the leadership program develops on you as a leader, less on the content and the skills of leadership, yeah? So more on the head and the heart, and that the hands comes third. That we believe that in the community sector, that the leadership principles and values that drive our sector have to be foremost in the leadership development approaches that are done in the training. And that it's not about going to a workshop or a training course and at the end of it, I'm a leader. That because we are leading in a context, and the leadership development programs that you engage in should be bringing your workplace into that learning, and you should be taking that learning out to the workplace to close that learning cycle, to bring it alive. Learning and knowledge is socially constructed, yeah? So we need to be doing collaborative learning. And there's a real trend right now for more and more online learning that people just do by themselves. I really encourage, and there's great courses out there, but I really encourage you that if you do an independent learning course, that you find a group of people on that course to connect with and do it with as well, or get a group of you to do it so that you're able to share and build on each other's learning and knowledge. Context matters, team, yeah? Not one size fits all. We're from different cultures, we're from different communities, we're from different regions. So I'm really cautious of leadership programs that tell you that this is the one way. Yeah, that this is the one way you have to lead, and this is the one model that you have to prescribe to. Apply some critical analysis to those courses, team, when you're doing them. That good leadership development programs really foster inquiry. And that's what I was talking before about leading in complexity, yeah, that ongoing learning. So your leadership development program needs to have an element of reflection in there. Either teaching reflective practice or part of the coursework needs to be reflecting on who you are as a leader, reflecting on your experiences within your workplace and within your communities around leadership, applying real critical thinking to the issues that you're facing and the experiences you're having. And also the leadership development needs to be research and evidence-based, yeah? Have a look at where their philosophies and their principles come from. Has it come from sound research? We absolutely advocate strongly that any leadership development program has to be practical but evidence-based, yeah? So you have to be going out there and trying out the stuff that you're learning for it to embed your learning. And finally, all good leadership development programs incorporate coaching and mentoring. Yeah, having a learning support person walking that journey with you for you to use as a sounding board, for them to challenge you, for you to be able to explore how you're seeing and feeling about things in your leadership development. Having a coach or a mentor is invaluable. So John's going to talk a bit about coaching and mentoring, but before I hand over, does anyone have any questions or thoughts or reflections? Kapaya. I'm going to hand over to you, John. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Kia ora, Sandy, and absolute tautoko to what you're saying. It's absolutely true. We live in a very interesting environment, and I love the Whitewater River example. It's Te Ara Te Ruru, a path of many troubles that we all have to navigate, and that's where leadership development and mentoring can play a real part. So before I kick into the quote unquote formal part of my prezzo. I'm going to get you guys to do something really tangible across this digital environment. I'm going to give you 30 seconds, starting as soon as I finish talking, to go and grab a piece of paper and a pen. I'm going to go old school and we're going to write something down. So here we go. Ready? And you're off. 30 seconds. I'll just hum some elevator music or something while you do it. And then it's Christmas time and we all hear every time I'm in Farmers. 30 seconds, brilliant. All right, does everyone have a pen or paper in front of them, or both? Just raise your hand if you're on screen. Nod your head if your video's off. That got you. Right, so here's what we're going to do, team. I'm going to bring it into you shortly. So I'm just going to share my screen, do some talking, and then we'll get on to why I needed that piece of paper from you. So hopefully you can all see the lovely words, power of mentoring. You should be able to. I can, you can too. Fabulous. So what is the power of mentoring? All right, let's keep it in a nutshell. In a nutshell, mentoring is very much a journey. It's a relationship that supports and encourages the leadership journey of individuals and their organizations. Thanks so much for the segue, Sandy, but we actually all talked very briefly in our breakout rooms about our leadership journey. So an example of mine, my leadership journey began at the feet of my whānau. I'm tuakana to a whopping great whānau. I'm a very pale-skinned eldest grandson of an Ngāti leader, so I became supportive of all those that were born after me. On my European side, I descend from a whole bunch of kings and warriors that were running around in the Celtic times back in the Dark Ages, and then eventually took over a castle, fought for a few other castles, and now own about 3 of them. So somewhere back in my lineage is that, and on my Māori side, I could trace back whakapapa verbally about 800 years. So for me, leadership was about that I stand in a place of so much history, and that I am just one little blip on this pathway of my whānau. So I learned how to lead in a family that way. As a professional, I was very independent and very strong-minded, and made sure I got my hands in a number of pies through my teams, which then developed a very independent mode of thought. I then moved heavily into the creative sector, where I learned about collaboration and engagement, how to profile and presence, and how to help other people elevate themselves. And then, of course, through my more professional career in recent times, I've been in a lot of leadership roles, and I've just found that it really is about that Māori whakatauki, right? E hara takatoa e tā takatahi e toa takatini, which is my leadership is not about me and how many gold stars I earn. It's about how well did I elevate those around me? How well did I enhance their experience? And how well did I make a real impact with the communities that I serve? So that's my journey as a leader, and mentoring can help you in many ways. Sounds awful to say it, but it really is a way that you can help cut some corners in your own leadership development. You can get the insight from those that have lived it. You can start to develop your own thoughts and your own processes through the advice and the encouragement and the guidance that you'll get. But it is a journey that is not all about the mentor. It's called mentoring, but it really is about the person receiving that knowledge. They need to drive that relationship. They need to be sucking out of their mentor everything they can, soaking it up like a sponge, and then applying it in a very real and tangible context. So that's where we are. So a little bit, you've heard a little bit about me and a bit about my background. I'm going to get you to do this in the chat box, team, using this lovely digital thing. What I want you to do is, in 1 minute flat, I want you to tell me your gender, your ethnicity, how many years you've been in the workforce in general, how many years you've been in your own role, how many children you have, if any, what your favorite food is, what your favorite meeting time is during the day, and whether you're into coffee, tea, or none of the above. So my example, as you'll see right in front of you, and I want to see this popping up in the chat inbox telling me that there's 50 people that have all replied, is I am male, I am a Māori European, I've been in the workforce for over 20 years. I've been in this particular role for less than 1 year. I have 2 children, human hurricanes both. I love pasta, it's probably my favourite food. My favourite meeting time is in the AM. I'm an early riser, I love to get on with it early, and I love coffee. Because I'm an early riser, I need to stay awake. So that's mine. Let's see what you have got in the chat section, and I'm really keen to see what people have got to say about themselves. 1 minute. I won't do any elevator music this time. And done. Awesome. Hey, thanks so much for those of you that were able to jump in and can contribute. It's always great when we get to learn a little bit about each other. And I'm probably sure that in that last minute, you've just seen popping up on screen some really great insights about the people that you're here with in this peer-to-peer fashion. So, ko wai koe, who are you? That's who I am. That's one little element of me. And that's part of what the beauty of mentoring really is. It is a human-to-human relationship. It's about 2 people really getting to know each other in the tightest window of time to make real change, to have real impact and make a real difference. And what is it really? It's about being real, right? Now, what do you mean about being real? It's 2 people, we are real. But what I mean by real, what I mean by being real, is about thinking about things differently so that you yourself can be an elevated leader, right? You can be resourced, you can be engaged, you can be active, and you can be real leaders. And that's the beauty of mentoring. And a great mentor can help give you those tools, set that mental framework, shift your own mindset, and support your initiative. Now, speaking of initiatives, I did ask you to think about some things differently, and I asked you to race off and grab a pen and paper. This is why. Right in front of you is IX. Anyone quickly jump in? Rochelle, yourself, you can do it for me. What does that say to you? What's IX when you see it?
9.
9. Brilliant. Yeah, everybody knows that, right? It's the Roman numerals for 9. Fantastic. So this is my challenge to you. Adding just one line, just one. I want you to turn 9 into 6. You have 10 seconds starting now. 5, 2, 1. Awesome. Now, for those of you that have your videos on, thanks so much. Those of you that don't, if you can turn them on, if you're in a place that's private and quiet, that's great. If not, sing along with the band, if you know what I mean. Right, so here we go. What I'm going to show you what I did. So this is, if you can see me on your gallery screen, you'll see I wrote IX as well. And if I'm adding just one line, let's see how you did. Anyone at all, anyone add that line? If you did, hold it up to your screen. Anyone add that line? Brilliant. All right. Did anyone add that line? 1 times 6 equals 6. For those who need a little maths exercise. Brilliant. All right. And who went really crazy? Who went really nuts? Who folded their paper in half right at that point and gave us a VX? Brilliant. Okay, just a bit of fun and just a bit of a challenge, but hey, look, that's one way to look at it. I just gave you one example. I asked you to come up with your own perception, and that's what we were able to get to. So what does that really highlight to us? It highlights that no matter what's going on in the world, no matter what you're doing, no matter who you're talking to, you can always see another perspective. And that's the power of mentoring. Another perspective that isn't yours, something you may not have seen, something you may not even be thinking about, a new approach that has been tried and true by someone else, and you're just learning about it now. That's the beauty of mentoring, right? you get to know each other on a human to human level, like we all just did. You get to see things from another perspective, like that little exercise I just gave you. There's no right or wrong answer to that. It all depends on your own perspective. What does it do? It'll make you more effective, more confident, and better connected. So our approach at the Mentoring Foundation is really straightforward. We've got a really strong approach that's based on a holistic focus, right? It's about the whole person, not just the skill set or the talents that you need to develop, but more about you as a leader. We have 4 areas of consideration: goals, role and capacity, context, and well-being. What is it you want to achieve? What role are you in right now that will help enable you to do that? What capacity do you have to make those changes? What is the context? What's your current environment? Where are you at in your life, in your world, in your work? And then, of course, well-being. How are you looking after yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually? So it's a quick, sharp snapshot. Those are the areas that we focus on through mentoring programs. And as Sandy said before, leadership comes in so many different shapes and forms, and it's a great way to do it. So who are we currently working with? People always want to have this kind of context. We work with a big idea with the Mentoring for the Arts program. You'll hear a bit about that from the lovely Huia, who'll be joining us later. Thrive Whanganui around venture programs for social enterprises, the Tyndall Foundation, who support a hell of a lot of what we do and are really the reason why the Mentoring Foundation existed to begin with. Bishop's Action Foundation, working with the Anglican Diocese on huge programs that shape and transform communities. Social Link, of course, in the Tauranga, Western Bay of Plenty area. TSB Community Trust, who've got right behind some of the iwi initiatives that we're doing within the region. So it just gives you an idea of who and what we're playing with. Who are we mentoring? Leaders in the community sector and not-for-profit. They're self-selected, so the mentees opt in to be part of this, and we work with key decision makers. Those are those key aspects. Look, there's lots of techniques and tactics that are out there. This is just one example. RASA, receive, appreciate, summarize, ask. It's something we train all our mentors in to make sure that they are communicating as effectively as they can, that they're making a great impression with their mentees, and that they're able to really assist and help and understand. Everyone can hear, not everyone listens. So we really do make sure that our mentees and mentors are in that frame of mind. We've got some proper commercial tools like the Wheel of Leadership, which many of you have seen before. I'm sure Sandy has. It's a key part. So those things are all out there. What mentoring isn't, and this is what people generally struggle to grasp when it comes to what is mentoring. It's not counselling or therapy, right? That can happen within it, especially when the person mentoring has experience in that area, but that's not the primary objective. It's not doing the work for the mentees. It's about guiding and assisting and supporting them in making those core decisions for themselves. And it's not a substitute for professional advice. This doesn't replace leadership development. It doesn't replace a professional course, but it's a wonderful supportive program that can help you be better leaders. So that's one of the key. We've an example of our expectations. We expect that in a mentoring program, you're going to have at least one session a month. It's going to be 6 to 8 month window. There'll be 1 to 2 hours minimum where you're fully present. Each time the mentees lead the relationship. That's really important. We've got a mentoring agreement full of do's and don'ts and what have yous. We can discuss that at a later date, and you stay in the loop. We report and feedback. We got milestone surveys, cohort meetups, and we do constant continuous improvement evaluation. That's what mentoring is. There's an agreement, there's a confidentiality piece. So that's where we're at. That's what we do. And that is how we do our very most to really make a difference to those organisations that really need us, and those individuals who need that extra support. You're going to hear some great stories shortly from some people that have gone through both leadership development and mentoring, and I'll hand you back to Rochelle. Thanks so much for your time.
Kia ora, thanks John, and thanks Sandy. Just an absolute wealth of information, which is really fantastic. We will send out the PowerPoints to you, the slide decks, so that you can read this and absorb it a little bit more after today's session. We've got about 10 minutes left, so just before I hand over to our leaders who are going to share a little bit about their lived experience. We will finish on time. We always aim to finish on time at 1 o'clock. For those who have an extra half an hour up their sleeve, we will stay online, and we do offer that last half an hour if you'd like to kind of meet some other peers in your network. We'll put you in breakout rooms. You're welcome to do that. It's completely optional. And so now I'm not sure if Huia is on, so I'll hand over to Michelle first. So Michelle, if you want to share a little bit about your own experience of going through this.
Thank you, Rochelle. Kia ora koutou. I am Michelle Kitney, and I lead Volunteering New Zealand, and we're based in Te Whanganui-a-Tara. We are a national organisation, and our purpose is to be the guardian of volunteering and to empower volunteers to enrich Aotearoa. I've been listening very carefully today. There's so much awesome information, and I've been reflecting as we go. My journey to this role as the CE has definitely been a learning on the job process, and stepping through volunteering, which has been very much part of my journey to where I am now. And through that, stepping into leadership roles, not always comfortably, but being the person most in the right time, at the right place at the right time to have to take those on, but also embracing those growth opportunities, and using volunteering in a way to develop new or more skills. But another key part of my journey to this role, when I was sort of reflecting on Sandy's horizontal and vertical framing, there was very much a vertical boost in that someone actually kept making me do things and pushed me to do stuff that were more the skills that were needed to do a role like I am now. So having someone boost you and push you, either formally or informally, it was quite an important part of my journey. And I'm always very grateful to them for pushing me. Even though I haven't always necessarily seen myself as a natural leader. And I've been thinking about what Sandy was saying about the leadership courses that they offer. I actually did one of the lead courses a couple of years ago, and it was fantastic. In part of my journey, I think I could definitely got to a point where I realized that one of the things that was holding me back was actually myself and my perception of myself, and what I should and shouldn't do, and was I that kind of traditional version of a leader, which doesn't necessarily resonate with the majority of us. I think the lead course that I did was focused, well, obviously you've talked to Sandy about the head and heart challenge and challenging people's perceptions of their own capability. I think was a real highlight for me from that course, and just in the conversations we had in the breakout room earlier, someone talked about leading from the centre rather than perhaps traditional more male or Pākehā related types of leadership styles that have kind of been out there for a while, and the course takes you through a range of different things, but I love the way that it focused on Indigenous models of leadership. That really resonated with me. But I think the key thing I found a real eye-opener in the course was that actually almost everyone in the course suffered from imposter syndrome. So I think that, and I could see Sandy and the people running it, a big focus was actually busting out that myth and getting people to change their perceptions of themselves. So from my other personal experiences, I guess I think things that make me strong are relationships and networks, and they're at the centre of our sector, and they're at the centre of well-being. And I think possibly sometimes we don't necessarily think that making time for those is part of the job, but I think actually they are, and we need to make time for networking and relationship building across sectors and between leader to leader, or however it works for you. But here in Wellington, we've got our own CE sort of informal support group where we connect regularly. It's now, once a month, possibly it might have wine, but it definitely has relationship building, and it's a network of people we can talk to each other about stuff that maybe we can't talk to our board about, or we can't talk to our staff about, obviously within the confines of confidentiality, but it builds a relationship that supports and nurtures us as well. And I think one of the things I reflected on through the last year is that people who often end up in leadership roles typically are quite resilient. And that's probably one of the strengths I've always thought about myself as having, is resilience and perseverance. But actually, when does resilience become not a strength, but I guess a risk to us? And what do we do to maintain that resilience? So making time for whatever it is that helps you maintain your resilience is really important. For me, that's relationships and things like that. So yeah, and I think having a good relationship with your board members and using that sounding board element is another element to that relationship that you draw on, kind of thing. So yeah.
Thanks, Mel. And over to you, Huia.
Kia ora koutou, ko Huia Sloan tōku ingoa. So I run an organisation in South Auckland called Ngā Rangatahi Toa, and what we do is, we've been around for 10 years. We use the creative arts as a medium to be able to re-engage our young people in South Auckland, either back into education or onto employment. A lot of these kids are right on the peripheral of coming out of school, or already come out of the school system. And so we work alongside them and their whānau and community to use the arts as a mechanism to re-engage, build coping strategies, and build resilience so that they might stay in that space for a little bit longer. So my experience with mentoring, I guess over the last 10 or so years, I've always had 2 or 3 mentors in place, both within Te Ao Māori and Te Ao Pākehā. And my most recent experience was with the Big Idea, and so that's around mentoring in the creative arts. And I always, what she was just talking about an imposter, and I've always felt that, because I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm a creative. I have a social practice background. I've been a social worker for a long time, and been in positive youth development for about 25 years. I'm a massive advocate of mentoring because of what it brings, and the impact of what it did for us in our organisation, of where we were at the stage of, when I stepped into the CE role 3 years ago, we were ready to implode, and we're a really lean organisation, and having Tim, my mentor, walk alongside us to be able to give us the capacity and the capability, predominantly to work on our governance structure, and to look at how we do that in a really strategic way. So he came to me just asking a whole lot of good questions of me, and he came to me with no ego, which is, as women, I think, and in roles of CE, it's quite hard to find men that will meet you where you're at and work with me to be able to build that capability and capacity within the board. What came from that is we changed out our whole board, and we were needing to do that to be able to look at the future for Ngā Rangatahi Toa and our strategic direction. As many of you will know, that's a massive undertaking when you're replacing your full board, and some of the tough and critical conversations that had to go alongside that. So he was great to be able to bounce off ideas, come to me with where I was at in my learning, and look at how we might go forward to be able to do that. Everything we do, at the very centre of what we do, is around wellbeing and self-care. So I fully understand and appreciate that context of being a CE and having to put that at the very center of everything we do. So for us, a lot of it is relationships, but it's also how we role model that from my board through to right down to operations. And he was a big part of that, of not just making it fluffy or making, oh, this is what you do and it's in your policies, but actually how we operationalize that to keep us well so that we could keep delivering the work we do and getting massive outcomes for our babies and community and continue to do that and sustain it really, really well. What I especially am really grateful for Tim is we have a power with relationship rather than a power over, or him coming to me thinking he has all the knowledge base, and he could respect and honour what I also brought to the relationship. So we talk a lot about akotanga, which is around the reciprocity of those relationships and understanding what I bring to that relationship as much as what he brought, which was around being able to conversate around strategy, how, you know, good models of practice around governance and sustainability of an organization. So yeah, I think that's it. We had a really very structured process, which I appreciate in terms of our mentoring sessions, outcomes for our mentoring, but also what was really gold is about our ability to pause, reflect, and then adapt of how we're going to go forward as a partnership, but also as an organization. And that's something that we do after each project we run. We, as you know, in the not-for-profit, it's sometimes you're just sprinting the whole way. For us, it was really key that we stopped to actually pause, reflect, and then respond and adapt our programs and service delivery. So it always met the needs of our community and whānau. Yeah, that's me. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thanks so much, Huia and Michelle, for sharing your lived experience of what it's like being a leader and the support structures and the things that you've done to help support yourself through this. So thanks everyone for joining us. I'm going to hand over to John to finish up. A reminder that these are recorded, so they're available on Huia's Facebook page and YouTube channel, that we will be sending out an email with the additional information from today, the PowerPoints, etc. And also there was a specific ask for John's whakatauki, so we'll talk to him about that. And thanks very much, and do stay on if you're able to. Over to you, John. Kia ora.
Kia ora, kia ora. I'll keep it short because we're out of time. Kia tātou katoa, ti aiho te aroha me te marutau, ti he mauri ora āmene. Kia ora.